The first incidence of false allegations was about year 3 of my relationship with our son was 3 years old, and she tried to take me for child support behind my back. And as an unmarried father, I had basically no rights by my son. She kept my son away from me for over 6 months, telling the courts and the social services and the police and everything that I was a drug dealer, I was abusive, I drank and drove with the kid all the time. Just anything she could say to try and make her case look better when it came towards custody court. And since that was a long run up and there was 4 or 5 different court cases, or court appearances, excuse me. And I was never ever actually charged with anything. In fact, she was charged with assault.
Recently or early on as part
Early on. This is back when we broke up, before I'd found out that she was trying to take me for child support. We broke up because she got drunk one night and chased me around the house and, yelling, screaming, I'm gonna break your head off and all this stuff. Without any kind of investigation, without any kind of evidence, they directly, related this towards the custody case, which, as I said, even in court there was false allegations. She showed a picture of my son holding a BB gun, a Red Ryder BB gun I got for him on his 3rd birthday. And she showed a picture of him holding the BB gun to the court, saying that I gave him a loaded rifle, a loaded .22 rifle, and let him run around the house with it, which is obviously plainly false. The judge actually showed the picture to the commissioner in the courtroom, who was an old retired cop, and he was just serving as commissioner to courthouse security. And he very clearly could tell that it was not a real firearm. So even directly in the middle of custody, there was, fully false allegations being made. Her brother threatened to beat me up and all this, and I've had threats on my vehicle to put sugar in the gas tank and all sorts of stuff. The police, luckily, I had a witness and videotape evidence, so the police had their hands tied with that one. They couldn't really turn around and try and make it out to be my fault. I'm sure they would have tried if they could have, but just the way they spoke to me, the amount of times I had to deal with them, the way that they told me there was nothing they could do to help me see my child over that period of 6 months while the custody case was being fought over in court. She gave me 0 visitation rights. There was no temporary order, but as an unmarried father, you have 0 rights to see your kid until the court gives you a parenting plan. Just the way the lawyers and the judges and everybody talked to me, there was 0 repercussions for her actions, and there was 0 recourse or any avenue for me to exploit. They just said I must stay away from her. I feel like that's the laws of the land and, partly, how she portrayed me, but I really think they're just, we have a horrible, horrible parenting system here in Canada that gives no rights to any unmarried father. Eventually, after the courts gave me 50-50 custody, we worked out a parenting plan, which is week on, week off, switching every Mondays, which she has abused many times since then. She has kept my kid away from me for nonsensical reasons, like she's sick or doesn't have a ride or just doesn't answer the phone and doesn't drop the kid off when she's supposed to. Even last Christmas, she kept him away from me all Christmas, and there was nothing I could do. I phoned the RCMP. They said, if she doesn't bring him back in 3 days, then we'll do something about it. I still, to this day, my kid is 7 years old now. It's been almost 4 years since custody was decided, and I'm still living in fear every time he goes over there that I'm not going to see him come back. I went to high school with her older brother, so I actually knew them from an earlier age. And she seemed to be a fine person and everything. I actually, unfortunately, impregnated her the first time I ever slept with her. It was just a one-night stand. But I decided to do the right thing by her and the child and stuck with her for the next 3 years. She hasn't worked a single day since the kid was born 7 years ago. She lives on welfare and is apparently quite happy to. I still have to pay her child support $178 a month. I mean, when WCB's only giving me, if I'm lucky, $1,500 a month, And I've got, I've got bills, I've got daycare to pay for, I've got groceries, I've got truck payment. If with 50-50 custody, I don't see why I'm personally paying it all. But, we take care of the kid when he's here half the time. She takes care of the kid when he's there half the time. Why is there any monetary, value in there? They live in Regina. I'm located out in Emerald Park here, so it's 20-30 minute drive. It's not too terrible, but he does go to school out here. And I even have to pay her fuel money to drive him to school out here. That was part of the agreement I made with her to get him to go to school out here, because we have a better school out here with better programs and better speech therapy, which he needs, as he has some learning disabilities. So, Christmas 2021, she came to pick up the child, was supposed to be there 5 hours later, and she actually showed up because she brought the kid back late last Christmas. Showed up early, demanded access to the child, demanded he be allowed to go home with her right then and there. We had some words, saying, this isn't the proper time. She then left with the child because I wasn't going to make a fuss and fight in front of the kid and everything. Then, the following morning at 11 o'clock in the morning, I had the RCMP show at my door saying I had assaulted her physically somehow. Now, both my mom and the child were present at the handover on Christmas Day. Nobody ever physically touched anybody or got within 5 feet of each other. And there was absolutely zero evidence or, crime. Nonetheless, that didn't stop the RCMP from showing up and taking me down to cells and fingerprinting me and giving me a court date. I was put in handcuffs. I wasn't allowed to get my phone. I wasn't allowed to get socks. I was shirtless when they put me in the back of a police car in the middle of winter. They charged me with the suspicion of assault. So basically they gave me a court date saying, show up here, give your version of the story, defend yourself. Even though there was no evidence to suggest I'd done anything in the first place. Not only did they not ask me, and yes, I do find that extremely strange and worrying, not only did they not ask me, they wouldn't tell me what I was being arrested for until I was in handcuffs. Let them into the house and didn't fight back, and was calm with them, and tried to be a good person, a good citizen. But they, telling the RCMP something is illegal doesn't always work out that well for you. Confused, frightened, worried, because if for whatever reason I was charged, I know this would go back to custody court. I know I would have trouble seeing my child. I know this would affect future employment opportunities, and just the basic slander of it and making me look like a woman beater when I've never touched a woman in my entire life and never would. No, I didn't know if I was going to be there for the whole night or what the deal was. But they gave me a chance to phone legal counsel. The legal counsel suggested I don't say anything to them and retain a lawyer. So obviously I followed the legal counsel. Now they turned around and made me feel bad, or tried to make me feel guilty for not saying anything, even though that was the counsel of a lawyer. Oh yeah, they kept asking repeatedly if I wanted to make a statement, or if they wanted this to be a written statement or a microphone recorded statement. And I kept telling them, the only thing I want to say is I have nothing to be afraid of because I didn't commit any crime. Oh, well, they were asking me questions to see, because they wouldn't tell me at all what she said. So they were basically fishing for information. They were dangling, the ability to defend myself while also trying to get me to incriminate myself. Well, my dad was a police officer for 26 years, and I know how they work. I knew what they were trying to do anyways. But just the fact that they were being so secretive and not giving me any information about what I was being charged with or what was said that I did, you could tell they were looking for me to step into a hole and screw myself over. First, I was in the interrogation room. I was waiting for the legal aid lawyer to call. And then after that, they took me down, put me in a cell for a couple of minutes. And then, since I assumed they didn't have a very busy day, they took me down to the fingerprint in the room where they take the pictures, the mug shots of you. Yeah. And so come February 2nd was my court date after I was released from cells on Boxing Day. So come February 2nd is my court date. I did manage to retain a lawyer. It was a $6,500 retainer. Half of it gets refunded if your case gets thrown out of court and doesn't go to actual court. So luckily, February 2nd comes around. Apparently the police submitted it to the wrong court. They submitted it to criminal court or something. And it wasn't even before the right judge. So then it got stayed till February 10th, which my lawyer then attended, and the prosecutor threw out the case due to lack of evidence and the fact that I had a written statement from an expert witness. So I did end up getting $3,250 of the retainer back, but that's still $3,000 some dollars I'm out just defending my name. So she came at noon on Christmas, and I believe it was actually closer to 1 o'clock. She was, she wasn't supposed to show up till 5 because she didn't bring the kid back the previous Christmas till 5 o'clock, and we split Christmas. We alternate, one of us will do Christmas on Christmas Eve and the other one will do Christmas on Christmas Day. So that way he gets to go see both families and both households. They showed up at 11 o'clock in the morning on Boxing Day and hauled me off down there. So there was nobody except my dog. They did let me put the dog away, but like I said, they wouldn't let me go get, socks or anything like that because I must have had a weapon hidden or something, All I've been told is that I'm being charged with assault. Not why, not by who, not nothing. It's over and done with. The prosecutor threw it out. I'm on WCU right now. I could barely afford to pay I had to borrow money to pay for the legal counsel on the February cases. There's no way I can afford to, go back to custody court. I'm about as satisfied as I can be. I'm glad I have 50-50 custody, but at the same time, even though she's been a horrible person to me, I don't want to keep him away from his mother because I know how bad that feels to have your child kept away from you. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't want to even though I wouldn't pee on her to put her out if she was on fire, I still wouldn't do that to any parent. Yes. I wouldn't keep any parent away from their child. Right. It's resolved until the next false allegation. She has also, this year, phoned the anonymous drinking and driving hotline 3 times in 1 week on me. The RCMP showed up all 3 times. 2 of the times I wasn't driving, and the 3rd time I had a DD with me and we were actually sitting down for a meal at the ice house, and the police officers walked right into the ice house and asked for so right into a crowded restaurant and said, "In here." And apparently they had a report of he was drinking and driving. But my truck had been parked there for an hour and a half, so it was physically impossible for that to have been me. 3 times in 1 week, I actually went down to the watch commander and made a complaint because the first officer was entirely rude and brusque about it. Mm-hmm. He made me breathalyze and everything. Obviously, I didn't blow over or I would have been arrested. And, all 3 times it was proven to be false. And after the 3rd time, I went down there and I said, if you guys come and do this again, in 2 days or 3 days, that's going to be harassment. Wow, false reporting, wasting police time. I'm sure there's many other, charges that if they so chose to, they could go after her for. Now, even perjury in court, lying to the courts, saying I abused her and stuff. No repercussions have ever come of it. She's never once been, silenced or put in her place or, told there's going to be any kind of ramifications for it. Men are guilty until proven innocent. Unfortunately, that's the way our society works, and it's even worse when you're an unmarried father. But just as males in general, you're presumed to be guilty until you can prove yourself innocent. And I don't think that's the way our courts and our legal system is supposed to work. I think that's highly unconstitutional. But, that's out of my control. I was brought up and raised to believe this was the true north, strong and free, land of the free, all that stuff. I thought, we took care of everybody and equality was an actual thing. It turns out, as I've gotten older and as I've been through, these horrible situations where nobody has helped me out, it turns out there's a second class of citizen. It turns out we're not all actually equal. It turns out, you have to fight for your right to be heard. When others will take, let's just say females, not all females, but females in general, everybody automatically jumps on their side and they're automatically believed, and the cops jump right to it. I've made complaints about her. I've phoned the police on her for actual valid reasons before, and she gets a letter in the mail. She doesn't get a couple of armed officers with their guns drawn pulling up on the front porch. Yeah. So I've lost most of my faith in the police, which is really sad because my dad was a police officer for 26 years. So I've lost faith in their ability to do their job objectively and, see both sides of the story, as well as court systems. Don't even get me started on that. It's a bloody joke, Like, it's guilty until proven innocent. And even then, the only way you can prove yourself innocent is if you have access to large amounts of money or lawyers or, there's legal aid. I tried to get legal aid one time. They told me I made too much money. If you make more than $800 a month, you don't get a lawyer. They say they'll provide you with a lawyer if you can't afford it or get one yourself. No, I was paying rent and bills and groceries, and I didn't have an extra, whatever, for lawyers. But I made more than $800 a month, so I was ineligible. In Canada, you have the right to be guilty. You have the right to be fired. You have the right to have your life ruined. You have the right to, be trampled on, have your supposed rights trampled on. You don't have the right to anything. Seriously anxious and gun shy, and for the rest of my life, I'm going to be worried about what's she going to do next? What's she going to say next? How is this going to affect my relationship with my kid or my access to my child? Or what other people think of me? Is she going around telling people I'm a woman beater? I constantly worry about that stuff. I have sleepless nights. I have days where I can't even eat. I'm sick to my stomach because of that stuff. Not once was I ever offered any kind of social support or a program or a counselor or aid of any kind. I do have my mother, who is a wonderful woman and, helps me, especially recently with the hip surgery and everything. She's helped out a lot because I can't do certain things I used to do. She's helped me out financially with the lawyers. I've had to borrow money off her to pay the lawyers. She was my expert witness during the custody case. She's actually a doctor who does child abuse cases. So she actually goes to court as an expert witness and testifies in court for, F Division and the RCMP and the prosecutors. So I got really lucky having her in my corner. But that's about it. I've even lost, relationships with cousins and aunts and things over this because apparently I'm a horrible, narcissistic, misogynistic, feminist who, no matter what the woman is always right, and they always take the woman's side, and the woman is always the victim. Doesn't matter if they initiated the problem or not. I just want to say I'm doing this because I've seen too many friends. I've had friends commit suicide over not being able to see their children, over false allegations, over all this. And I don't want my son to have to grow up in a world where you have to watch your back like that, and where you're potentially, going to be victimized by every woman in your life, or every woman you have a relationship when they can just turn around, no fault, no recriminations, no reciprocations, and ruin your life. I don't want my son to grow up and have to deal with that.